We are keeping tabs with what's happening with everything surrounding the U.S. men's national team. It got a little bit quiet here since the changes at the top. Investigation ongoing with U.S. soccer. We have the January games behind us. We're looking towards the March games here in the Nations League. That'll be here very quickly. And of course, we're still waiting to get a coach. Some bright spots around Europe. Leeds United, not one of them. A club with 3 American players and 2 American coaches. Losing to Nottingham Forest. How much more time will Jesse Marsch get? I would imagine a little bit because he just had this winter market. Weston McKennie. By the way, Weston McKennie looked a little heavy. He looked a little heavy coming off the bench. Brendan Aronson on the bench. As we said, this is critical for U.S. soccer. But we're not going to dwell on Leeds United. We're looking at a potential player that, in my estimation and many others, can change the prospects for U.S. soccer heading into the 2026 World Cup, in particular because they need a striker. And yes, I am speaking of Folarin Balogun, who is currently leading the French League, Ligue 1, in scoring with 14 goals. This weekend, he played 90 minutes for Stade Rennes as they tied Auxerre. Did not score a goal, but previous game against Lorient scored a hat trick. Beautiful goals. I mean, he is, when you watch him, you're like, whew. He's fast. He's technical. He uses both feet. He scores in so many different ways. I mean, he is the goods. This is a star, a big star that the U.S. could normally just dream about. But he was born in New York. He left when he was 2 years old. And now Balogun, who is with Arsenal, loaned out to Stade Rennes, is really crushing it. And the U.S. have got to do their best to get him on board. And I believe they have a shot at it. And in case you don't know the story about Balogun, he American-born, English-raised, Nigerian parents, so he could end up with 3 different national teams. All 3 have their positives, right? Obviously, England is a world power. Maybe a missed Harry Kane penalty from making a World Cup final. I truly believe that. If they beat the French, and I thought they were better than the French, they would have probably gotten to that final. They're going to still be good. They have so many good young players coming through. Bukayo Saka and Jude Bellingham, and the list goes on and on. Nigeria didn't make the World Cup, but they had made, I think it was 5 of the last 7 World Cups, made a couple round of 16s. It's a big name. It's a huge country that really hasn't hit its potential, but that could be very appealing for Flo Balogun. And then the United States, who do not have to qualify for the World Cup, they are already in as being the hosts, and they need a striker. And he must be looking at it. He goes, he's got good midfielders. They got good fullbacks. They got good defenders. They didn't give up a lot of goals at the World Cup. I could come right in here and make a difference. And today, here on the Soccer OG, we will talk about what needs to happen. And can it happen? And will it happen for Folarin Balogun to end up with the USMNT? And what the timetable looks like. By the way, check out the Soccer OG podcast, where all podcasts are available. Got a great one there with Herculez Gomez, if you haven't listened to that one. Have Ben Jacobs of CBS Sports coming out this week. We'll talk about the most interesting story in football right now, and that is the Chelsea winter market. We're going to get to the bottom of it. This is just fascinating. And we'll talk a little bit about Leeds. And of course, like and subscribe us right here. Tons of new subscribers every day, and I appreciate that. You can catch me here on YouTube and, of course, on the podcast, The Soccer OG. So, how good has Balogun been? Well, he's compared to Thierry Henry. You see it. Arsenal loaned him. Arsenal, obviously in first place in the Premier League. There is conversation of bringing him back maybe next season. Remember, Gabriel Jesus has been injured. Eddie Nketiah has been starting, so there is a potential for him to slot in, and Mikel Arteta is keeping tabs of it, but there is a spot for him. Now, if he plays and starts for Arsenal, I mean, that's a different stratosphere, right? Iran is one thing, but Ligue 1 is a very interesting. To lead that league in goals is really impressive. But he could end up, I think he will end up at Arsenal. And he has 14 goals right now in Ligue 1. And just to look at it, so he has 14 goals. Alexander Lacazette, Kylian Mbappe have 13. I mean, you recognize all these guys on the top scorers. Neymar, 12. Jonathan David has 12. Messi is 9th in the scoring. Briel Mbolo, Luis Openda, very big name forwards, all in that top 10. You look at all the top 5, the big 5 European leagues, and there's only a handful, 3-4 guys who have scored more goals. Everyone's played a different amount of games, but only a few that have scored more goals than Balogun. Erling Haaland has 25 goals. Robert Lewandowski has the same amount of goals, 14 goals for Barcelona. He's the top scorer in Spain. Niklas Füllkrug, top scorer in the Bundesliga. He has 13. Victor Osimhen, who we'll talk about in a moment, top scorer in the Serie A with 16. So he's right there. And he's ahead of all those incredible names in French football. So when you're looking, if you want any data about what he's capable of, and of course he could cool off, but I mean, this has been sensational. I've seen enough to know, is he an upgrade? Certainly an upgrade. Now, let's look at the striker situation for the U.S. It was a nightmare at the World Cup. We couldn't score goals. The pecking order changed considerably. In the end, it was Jesus Ferreira, Josh Sargent, and Haji Wright. At one point or the other, guys that were competing for those spots included Jordan Pefok, included Ricardo Pepi, Daryl Dike, and there's like 7 really good players there. They need one guy to emerge, and no one's emerged more than Balogun. Pepi's showing some signs of life, but not to this level. And when you look at these two players, I mean, Balogun is just, it's a feast on the eyes. We need, hopefully, a couple of these guys to step up. I'm hopeful that it's Daryl Dike too. But somebody has to emerge. So you have a clear-cut striker, just like England and Nigeria, who we'll talk about, certainly do. And maybe there'll be some new guys, but we don't have anyone like this. So right now, Balogun is moving ahead of all those guys. If Balogun goes to another national team, then we have to reassess. And we'll be fine. I mean, this is just a moment where this is the most important player to get in the U.S. fold. And people will be antsy to get him in as soon as possible. And I would ask you to be patient. This is, first of all, the U.S. doesn't have a sporting director, doesn't have a general manager, doesn't really have a coach. They have an interim coach in Anthony Hudson. They don't really have a lot on the upcoming stretch. We've heard from Cindy Parlow-Cohn. They're going to probably add a sporting director in the summer, which means they don't add a coach until the summer. So you wait. In the sense of filling those positions. You don't wait on the campaign to get Balogun on board. But Flo Balogun is going to play this smartly. He doesn't have to rush into this. He is in a great position. And I think that benefits the U.S. because of the reasons I told you, is that he can wait it out. Now, we'll want him to be cap-tied in March against Grenada or El Salvador. That's not going to happen. Very, very unlikely. There's no reason for Balogun to rush into this. And the U.S. will be tentative to rush into this because their house is a bit of a mess at this moment. Anthony Hudson could do some work here. Really, the group that can make the biggest difference is the players. And there are some connections. Tim Weah plays in the French league. Similar background, really, to Balogun. I'm sure there's some ties that bind there. Yunus Musa as well certainly has a connection. Matt Turner plays at Arsenal. There's a connection there. Whomever the U.S. players. This is a U.S. team that we have seen in the past with some of the dual nationals that guys want to play with. It's exciting. If you watched the World Cup, if you were not American, you looked at this U.S. team and said, very interesting. I like what they're doing. I know we were a little unsatisfied, but I think from a perspective of a neutral, they would look at the U.S. and say, okay, that's a team on the rise. Remember, they were one of the youngest teams. So the players really have to push forward. They go, hey, Flo, oh, you're going to love it here. And that can make a big difference. But again, Balogun doesn't have to rush in. Many of you I've seen on social media run, I can't believe U.S. soccer. Why did they make why did they do this? And it's going to cost us getting the signature of Balogun. Who's going to step up? We don't have anyone. Who's going to talk to him? You know who's pretty effective at getting dual nationals, in particular European dual nationals? Yes, Greg Berhalter. Greg Berhalter's not coming back into the mix. I don't think so. He still wields some power because he's connecting with Anthony Hudson. But Greg Berhalter, he was like, 3-0. He got Anthony Robinson. He got Yunus Musa. He got Serginho Dest. Maybe these guys were all bound to play for the U.S. and it wasn't a big contribution from Berhalter, but we are just dealing with the facts that he is perfect with these European dual nationals. He was convincing. Yunus Musa, England were pushing hard for him. Serginho Dest, the same with the Dutch team. He got them. So while maybe lacking a bit with the dual nationals from USA and Mexico, maybe that will change here as we see things brewing with the U.S. national team. Not the case for the Europeans. But Greg Berhalter, he may play a role here, and I would encourage him to do it if he has these guys' ears. And I think he does. And I know that'd be like, Greg Berhalter, no. This is his wheelhouse. This is one of the things that he was good at. So, again, we have to wait to see what will happen. Balogun has played, started with the Arsenal Academy, played with the England under-18s, under-20s, under-21s. He's with the U.S. under-18s as well. If he can feature there with England, with Arsenal, we said Eddie Nketiah is there. We should also mention Leandro Trossard. This is a team currently in first place. It would make sense. And then we can reassess. But I don't think he's going to make his decision at the earliest, maybe the summer. What national team has the most to offer? I truly believe it's the U.S. You're already qualified for the World Cup. You've got an exciting young team, and they desperately need a striker. Nigeria doesn't need a striker. Victor Osimhen is going to be their number one guy. Taiwo Awoniyi, who plays at Nottingham Forest, is a solid number two. Balogun could compete with that, but the U.S. does not have a one or a two like that. So it's not assured that he starts for Nigeria. He's not starting ahead of Osimhen. Maybe they play them together, but I just don't know. And we don't know if Nigeria qualifies for the World Cup. A lot more African teams will be qualifying. I think it's 3 more or 4 more spots. So Nigeria is looking pretty good. They made the final 10 teams for qualifying here and then lost, I believe it was to Ghana, which saw them fall just short of the World Cup. What about England? England has Harry Kane. Harry Kane's 29. I think he'll be back for the next World Cup. That'll be his swan song, and no one's going to displace Harry Kane. You have Bukayo Saka, who could probably play in that position. You have Tammy Abraham. You have Callum Wilson, who was the number 2 in Qatar. You have Marcus Rashford, maybe Raheem Sterling. A lot of guys who can fill out those spots. So again, not really etched in stone that Balogun can start or play significant minutes for England and really even make the roster. I don't know. The U.S. is his best option for playing at a World Cup and making a World Cup. That is, to me, without question. Now, is that appealing enough for him to make it through? I don't know. I think playing for Nigeria and England have so many positives that if you get a chance to participate with them, you take it. Now we wait and see what he can do for the rest of this season with Ron and see if he goes back to Arsenal. I think he'll be with Arsenal next season. And USA has to sell hard. has to sell hard to get this player. By the way, Rennes coach Will Still, really interesting story. Will Still, Belgian-born, British-born, I should say, Belgian, learned to play with that video game Football Manager on to become a real manager, and he's doing some fun things with Stade Rennes. So that's another. I just thought that was an interesting little aspect here. He has been scoring in the league. He's been scoring in French Cup. Rennes are 10th in the standings. They could be wrapping up. I don't know if they'll qualify for the European spots, but they'll give it a good run. They're not going to be relegated. For a team that just got promoted to the first division in 2018. Not a regular in the top flight in France, but now they are doing just that. So here we go. Eligible for the March window. Do you cap tie him? Probably not. You don't rush anything if you're the U.S. to get players, but you get in his ear. That's the one thing you can do, and things will get better for U.S. soccer. They have a shot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they have a really good shot, even as it stands right now. We have enough positives there. The Soccer OG. Check us out here on YouTube under my name, Max Pretos. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe us here. We'll be back with so much more. I mean, it's all happening, folks. Bad news about the Sounders, though, by the way.